The power of divine light. In the beginning, there was no noise, no chaos, no fear, only silence. And within that silence, something moved. Not a sound, not a form, not a shape, but a presence. And that presence was light. Not the light that burns the eyes, but the light that awakens the soul. Before time learned how to tick, before space learned how to stretch, before matter learned how to exist, light knew. It knew itself. And by knowing itself, it created everything. This is not poetry. This is memory. Because deep inside you, beyond thought, beyond language, beyond belief, you remember this light. That is why you are drawn to truth. That is why beauty moves you to tears. That is why darkness never fully satisfies you. Because you were born from light. And light always calls its own back home. Pause here. Breathe. Let this truth settle not in your mind, but in your chest. Every human life is a journey between two lights. The light you came from, and the light you must remember. Everything in between. Pain, joy, love, loss, fear, ambition, is not random. It is training. You were not sent here to survive. You were sent here to illuminate. But here is the great deception of the world. The world teaches you to chase brightness outside, while forgetting the radiance within. It teaches you to look up at the sun, but ignore the flame in your own heart. And slowly, quietly, without violence, you forget who you are. You begin to believe you are small, limited, broken, unworthy. But let me ask you something. And answer honestly, not logically. Have you ever seen a broken sunrise? Have you ever seen light fail to shine? Because it doubted itself? No. Light shines because it is light. And so do you. Here is a truth that will unsettle you. Darkness is not your enemy. Ignorance is. Darkness does not attack light. It cannot. Darkness simply waits for light to leave. And ignorance is the forgetting of light. This is why fear grows when awareness fades. This is why hatred grows where understanding dies. This is why suffering deepens when meaning is lost. Divine light is not a weapon. It is a revelation. It doesn't destroy evil. It exposes it. And exposed illusions cannot survive. Think about this carefully. Why does truth feel heavy at first, but freeing later? Why does awakening feel painful before it feels peaceful? Because light enters where darkness has lived for a long time. And darkness resists, not violently, but emotionally. It whispers. Stay the same. Don't question. Don't change. Don't look too closely. But divine light does not negotiate. It reveals. And once seen, cannot be unseen. Here is something ancient mystics understood, that modern minds are only beginning to rediscover. Light is intelligence. Not metaphorical intelligence, but living, organizing awareness. Everything that exists organizes itself around light. Plants bend toward it. Animals migrate by it. Human cells respond to it. Even your thoughts are electrical patterns seeking clarity. You are literally wired for illumination. Which means when you live in darkness, your entire being feels misaligned. This is why people feel empty even when successful. Why comfort doesn't cure despair. Why distraction never satisfies. The soul is not hungry for pleasure. The soul is hungry for light. Let me take you deeper now. There are moments in life when time seems to pause. A near-death experience. A deep meditation. A moment of intense love. A brush with loss. People across cultures describe the same thing. A light. Brighter than the sun. Yet gentle. Welcoming. Knowing. A light that does not blind, but understands. Ask yourself, why does death feel less terrifying to those who have seen the light? Because once you encounter divine light, you realize something profound. Life does not end. Ignorance does. Divine light does not live in temples made of stone. It lives in awareness. It does not belong to the powerful. It reveals itself to the humble. It does not shout through thunder. It whispers through intuition. That quiet inner voice, telling you what is right, even when it is inconvenient. That is light. That sudden clarity. That stops you from making a destructive choice. That is light. That compassion you feel, even when you have been hurt. That is light. And every time you ignore it, the world grows a little darker. Every time you follow it, the universe adjusts itself in your favor. Here is a dangerous question. Dangerous because it awakens responsibility. What if your life is not about you at all? What if you are here because light needed a vessel? In this place. At this time. With your experiences. Your wounds. Your voice. What if the pain you survived was not meant to destroy you, but to expand your capacity to carry more light? Because light that has never known darkness cannot guide others through it. Let this sink in. You are not punished for your suffering. You are trusted with it. Trusted to transform it. Trusted to transmute it. Trusted to turn wounds into wisdom. This is the alchemy of divine light. It does not erase scars. It turns them into beacons. And now, a truth that may change how you see everything. Divine light grows stronger when shared. Fear multiplies when hidden. Light multiplies when given. This is why love grows when expressed. Why hope grows when spoken. Why truth grows when lived. You do not lose light by sharing it. You become more of it. Right now, as you listen to this, something is happening beyond words. Awareness is expanding. Memory is returning. Recognition is awakening. You are not hearing something new. You are remembering something ancient. Something eternal. something true. And this is only the beginning. Because next, we will go even deeper into why the world resists awakened souls. How divine light rewires the human mind. Why silence is the gateway to illumination. And how you can live as light in a world addicted to darkness. Stay with me. This journey is far from over. And now, we arrive at the moment most people avoid. Because light does not only comfort. Light demands. It demands honesty. It demands courage. It demands that you stop pretending you are smaller than you are. This is why awakening is rare. Not because light is unavailable, but because responsibility is heavy. When you see clearly, you can no longer blame blindly. When you are illuminated, you can no longer hide in ignorance. And the world is built on people hiding. Here is something few are ready to hear. Most suffering is not caused by evil intentions, but by unconscious living. People hurt others because they are asleep. They lie because they are afraid. They destroy because they have forgotten the light within themselves. And when divine light enters a person, it does not make them perfect. It makes them aware. Aware of their words. Aware of their choices. Aware of their impact. This awareness feels like weight at first. But it is not a burden. It is power. Think about this deeply. Why do you think silence feels uncomfortable to so many people? Because silence removes distraction. And distraction hides darkness. In silence, light speaks. That is why ancient seekers withdrew into caves, deserts, forests. Not to escape the world, but to hear the light beneath the noise. And today, the noise has never been louder. Endless scrolling. Endless opinions. Endless comparisons. Endless stimulation. All designed for one purpose. To keep you from hearing yourself. Because a person who hears their inner light cannot be controlled easily. Let me say this plainly. A society that profits from confusion will never promote clarity. A system built on fear will never encourage illumination. This is why divine light has always been dangerous to those who crave power. Not because light attacks authority, but because it makes blind obedience impossible. An awakened soul asks questions. An awakened soul feels truth. An awakened soul cannot be hypnotized by illusions. Now here comes a revelation that may change how you see your struggles. What if confusion is not your failure, but the signal that you are outgrowing old patterns? What if anxiety is not weakness, but sensitivity to misalignment? What if sadness is not emptiness, but the soul grieving separation from its own light? Pain is not always a problem. Sometimes pain is a message. And divine light is the language that decodes it. This is why moments of crisis often precede awakening. Illness, loss, heartbreak, failure. When the external world collapses, attention turns inward. And inward, the light waits patiently. Not judging. Not rushing. Not forcing. Waiting. Here is something deeply paradoxical. Light cannot be forced. But it cannot be stopped either. You cannot manufacture awakening. But you cannot permanently suppress it. Truth has patience. And eventually, every soul is confronted with it. Sometimes gently. Sometimes violently. But always precisely when needed. Now listen carefully, because this part matters more than anything before it. Divine light does not ask you to escape the world. It asks you to transform how you live in it. You don't need to renounce life. You need to infuse it with awareness. Eating with presence. Speaking with intention. Working with purpose. Loving with clarity. This is how light enters matter. This is how the invisible becomes visible. A person living in divine light looks ordinary from the outside. They still work. They still struggle. They still feel pain. But something is different. They do not react blindly. They do not hate easily. They do not collapse under chaos. Because their center is illuminated. They are guided from within. Let me ask you a question only you can answer. Who would you become? If fear no longer controlled your decisions, what truth would you speak? If rejection no longer terrified you? And now, before this moment fades into memory, before distraction pulls you away, before doubt creeps back in, I want you to remember this feeling. This clarity. This stillness. This quiet strength. That is divine light touching awareness. And it is not leaving. And now, we move into the most misunderstood truth of all. Divine light does not arrive to make your life easier. It arrives to make your life truer. Ease is temporary. Truth is permanent. This is why awakening often begins with discomfort. Because when light enters a life, it rearranges priorities. What once mattered loses grip. What once felt urgent feels hollow. What once terrified you loses power. And what remains is what is real. Here is something most people are never told. Your ego fears divine light more than pain. Because pain can be explained. Pain can be blamed. Pain can be worn like an identity. But light dissolves false identities. It asks, who are you without your stories? Who are you without your wounds? Who are you without your masks? And silence follows. Because the answer cannot be spoken. It must be experienced. This is why so many people return to distraction after moments of clarity. Because clarity removes excuses. And excuses are comfortable. But divine light is not cruel. It is compassionate enough to wait. It will let you wander. It will let you forget. It will let you fall asleep again. But it will never stop calling. Think about this. Why do moments of awe feel sacred? A sunset. A star-filled sky. A newborn's breath. A deep act of kindness. Because awe temporarily silences the ego. And when the ego quiets, light becomes visible. You don't create awe. You allow it. Just like illumination. Now let us go even deeper. To something that sounds simple, but carries infinite weight. Attention is the doorway to light. Where your attention goes, light flows. This is why fear grows when attention feeds it. This is why love expands when noticed. This is why gratitude rewires perception. You are always illuminating something. The question is, what are you illuminating? Your wounds? Your worries? Your regrets? Or your awareness? Divine light does not require perfection. It requires presence. You don't awaken by becoming flawless. You awaken by becoming honest. Honest about your pain. Honest about your fear. Honest about your longing. Because longing for truth is already truth awakening. Here is a realization that changes everything. Light does not judge darkness. It understands it. Darkness is simply light that forgot itself. And the moment it remembers, darkness ends. This is why condemnation never heals. Why shame never transforms. Why punishment never awakens. Only illumination does. Now imagine this. What if every person who hurt you was acting from a place of forgotten light? What if hatred is not strength, but pain unrecognized? What if forgiveness is not weakness, but clarity? This does not excuse harm, but it explains suffering. And understanding is the beginning of freedom. Divine light changes how you see others, before it changes how you see yourself. You stop labeling people as enemies. You start seeing wounded souls. You stop reacting automatically. You start responding consciously. And slowly, the world softens. Not because it became kinder, but because you became clearer. Now let me reveal something subtle but powerful. Light does not shout its presence. It feels like peace. It feels like steadiness. It feels like inner alignment. That quiet confidence. That doesn't need validation. That is light integrated. That calm during chaos. That is light anchored. That compassion that survives betrayal. That is light embodied. Most people wait for certainty before they act. Light acts before certainty arrives. Because light creates certainty through movement. This is why faith is described as walking before the path appears. Not blindly, but trustingly. Trust is light in motion. Let me ask you something deeply honest. What truth have you been avoiding? Because it would change your life. What inner knowing have you silenced? Because it felt inconvenient. What calling have you delayed? Because it demanded courage. That hesitation is not fear. It is light pressing against limitation. And now, we approach one of the most important realizations of all. You do not awaken once. Awakening is not an event. It is a practice. A daily choice to see clearly. To speak truthfully. To act consciously. To love deliberately. Some days you will shine brightly. Some days you will flicker. But once lit, you are never truly dark again. This is why even after setbacks, something inside you refuses to fully collapse. That resilience is not personality. It is remembrance. Here is the final layer we must touch. Divine light is not meant to isolate you. It connects. You begin to sense unity beneath separation. Patterns beneath chaos. Meaning beneath suffering. You realize that harming another is dimming yourself. And serving another is illuminating both. This is not philosophy. This is lived truth. Those who embody light become stabilizing forces in unstable times. They don't dominate conversations. They don't seek attention. But when they speak, People listen. When they act, things shift. When they arrive, something feels different. And now, as this moment settles, I want you to understand something with absolute clarity. You were never meant to be a spectator in this world. You were meant to be a signal. A reminder. A presence. A quiet revolution of awareness. If you are still here, still listening, still feeling, that means something inside you has already answered the call. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But truthfully. And that is how all real transformation begins. We move into the territory where words begin to fail. Yet truth becomes undeniable. Because divine light is not something you understand. It is something you become. Understanding belongs to the mind. Becoming belongs to the soul. And the soul does not argue. It knows. Here is a realization that quietly dismantles fear. Light does not compete. It does not rush. It does not compare. It does not envy. Only darkness competes for attention. Light simply is. And because it is, everything else eventually rearranges around it. This is why calm presence can silence chaos. Why a grounded person can shift an entire room. Why one conscious soul can alter the direction of many. Not through force. Through frequency. You see, every emotion has a weight. Every thought has a vibration. Every intention has a direction. Fear contracts. Love expands. Awareness stabilizes. Divine light is not emotional intensity. It is clarity without distortion. It is seeing what is, without needing it to be different. And paradoxically, that is what changes everything. Let us speak now about the illusion that keeps most people asleep. The belief that light must look extraordinary. People wait for visions. Voices. Miracles. Signs in the sky. But divine light usually arrives quietly. As insight. As restraint. As the sudden decision not to repeat an old pattern. No applause. No witnesses. Just truth. Choosing you. Think about how many lives are shaped by unconscious repetition. The same arguments. The same mistakes. The same self-sabotage. Light interrupts patterns. And patterns resist interruption. This resistance is not failure. It is proof that transformation is occurring. Here is something you may not have considered. Every time you pause before reacting, you create space for light. Every time you question a habitual thought, you weaken unconsciousness. Every time you choose presence over impulse, you are practicing illumination. Enlightenment is not distant. It is built moment by moment. Now let us address the fear that rises in many awakened souls. If I live in truth, will I lose people? Yes. But not in the way you fear. You do not lose people. You lose alignment with those who were connected to the version of you that was asleep. And what replaces them is not loneliness. It is authenticity. And authenticity attracts resonance. Light refines relationships. It does not destroy them. But it removes what was built on illusion. And what remains is real. Here is a truth rarely spoken aloud. Not everyone is meant to walk with you forever. Some walk with you until you awaken. Some walk with you because you are asleep. Light reveals which is which. And clarity, though painful at first, is mercy. Let us go even deeper now. There comes a moment in illumination when you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And begin asking, what is this teaching me? That shift alone is the crossing point between suffering and wisdom. Because the moment you learn, pain loses its grip. Divine light does not make you emotionless. It makes you less enslaved by emotion. You still feel sadness. But you do not drown in it. You still feel anger. But you do not become it. You still feel fear. But it no longer decides for you. This is freedom. Not the absence of feeling, but the presence of awareness. Now imagine this truth fully embodied. A world where people respond instead of react. Where disagreement does not become hatred. Where power is measured by restraint. Where success includes inner peace. This world does not begin with governments. It begins with individual illumination. With you. And this brings us to one of the most sacred understandings of all. Light is not given to the worthy. Light makes you worthy by revealing your essence. You do not earn illumination. You remember it. If at any point while listening, you felt resistance, that is not rejection. That is the ego loosening its grip. If you felt emotion rising, that is not weakness. That is stored truth surfacing. If you felt silence inside, that is not emptiness. That is presence. Now pause. Not physically. Internally. And ask yourself, not verbally, but honestly. What am I being invited to release? A belief? A fear? A version of myself that no longer fits? Light always asks for space. And whatever you release becomes room for truth. We are approaching a quiet turning point now. Not a climax. A grounding. Because divine light is not about elevation alone. It is about integration. Bringing clarity into daily life. Awareness into ordinary moments. Sacredness into the mundane. This is how light stays. You do not need to convince anyone. You do not need to announce your awakening. Light is self-evident. It shows in how you listen. How you speak. How you choose. How you pause. People may not understand you. But they will feel you. And finally, let this truth settle deeper than thought. You were never late. You were never behind. You were never broken. You were unfolding. At the exact pace required. To carry the light you are now remembering. We are still moving forward. There is still depth ahead. Still silence to enter. Still clarity to stabilize. We arrive at a place where most journeys quietly end. And where true journeys actually begin. Because once light is recognized, it asks a single, unavoidable question. How will you live now? Not someday. Not after everything is perfect. Not when fear disappears. Now. Divine light is not impressed by intention alone. It reveals itself through embodiment. Through the way you speak when you could wound. Through the way you act when no one is watching. Through the way you remain gentle in a world addicted to force. There is a subtle but powerful shift that happens in those who integrate light. They stop trying to prove anything. They no longer argue to be right. They no longer chase validation. They no longer feed on conflict. Not because they are weak. But because clarity makes noise unnecessary. Silence becomes strength. Here is a realization that dissolves comparison. Light does not look the same in everyone. In one person, it appears as compassion. In another, as courage. In another, as wisdom. In another, as quiet endurance. Stop measuring your light against someone else's expression. A candle does not envy the sun. A star does not compete with the moon. Each illuminates what it was meant to illuminate. Now let us speak of something deeply practical, yet profoundly spiritual. Integrity is light in action. When your thoughts align with your words. When your words align with your actions. When your actions align with your values. Light flows without obstruction. Inner conflict dims illumination. Alignment amplifies it. This is why peace is not found by escaping life, but by living it honestly. Many people ask, how do I protect my light? The answer is simpler than expected. You protect light by not betraying yourself. Every time you ignore your inner knowing, light weakens. Every time you honor it, even quietly, light stabilizes. Self-respect is not ego. It is illumination refusing to be dimmed. Now listen carefully, because this truth can change how you move through the world. You do not need to absorb the darkness of others to prove your compassion. Boundaries are not barriers to love. They are containers for light. You can understand pain without becoming consumed by it. You can be present without being pulled into chaos. This is mature illumination. There will be moments, and this must be said honestly, when living in light feels lonely. Not because you are alone, but because fewer people are willing to see clearly. When you stop participating in unconscious patterns, some connections fade. Let them. What leaves was never sustained by truth. And what arrives will recognize you instantly. Here is a question worth sitting with. What would change in the world if more people valued clarity over comfort? If truth mattered more than winning? If awareness mattered more than appearance? The world does not suffer from lack of intelligence. It suffers from lack of presence. And presence is light made conscious. Divine light is not dramatic. It is consistent. It shows up in daily restraint, in honest reflection, in choosing long-term meaning over short-term relief. This is why true illumination ages well. It deepens instead of fading. Now let us touch something sacred. Gratitude is one of the purest expressions of light. Not forced positivity. Not denial of pain. But recognition. Recognition that even struggle carries instruction. That even delay carries protection. That even loss carries redirection. Gratitude does not ignore darkness. It acknowledges light within it. At some point on this path, you stop asking life to spare you from difficulty, and start asking it to make you clear. Clear enough to respond wisely. Clear enough to love consciously. Clear enough to remain grounded in uncertainty. This is not resignation. This is sovereignty. And now, let us arrive gently at a truth so simple. It is often overlooked. Light does not need your perfection. It needs your participation. Your willingness to notice. Your courage to pause. Your humility to learn. That is enough. Always has been. If you feel quieter now, not empty, but still, that is not the end of something. That is alignment. Alignment between who you are and who you are becoming. And as this awareness settles, remember this above all else. You are not here to escape darkness. You are here to bring light into it. Not loudly. Not forcefully. But faithfully. Moment by moment. Choice by choice. Breath by breath. Now, if you felt something awaken while listening, if your chest feels heavy yet peaceful, if your eyes feel warm without knowing why, that is not emotion. That is recognition. You recognized yourself. Now listen to me carefully.